Alright, so let's finish out the rest of this. We're talking about concepts. Human beings seem to have a natural tendency to organize their work and begin to do their world and begin to do so as early as 3 months of age. That's when they can recognize that their mom's there or not there. They begin to realize that nice lady who takes care of them, and want to be near her. As children begin to speak, the concept development is reflected to some extent to the size of their vocabulary. That alarms me in itself, and I think you know why. And this very next line even tells us more. By the time they reach school age, they typically understand 8,000 to 14,000 words. I wonder today if our students are maybe more like 8,000 than the 14,000, and I wonder the reason why. I think I know, but I want you to stop the video, call a friend, text a friend, tell whoever's at your house why you think that is. We've talked about that enough in class that you ought to know. Alright, then students don't fully understand the concept until they can identify both examples and non-examples of the concepts with complete accuracy. Believe it or not, this is how teachers who don't teach education classes, who've never taught in the classroom, this is kind of how they're taught to do in college, so I've been told. They're told to give the concept and to give an example of what it is, an example of what it's not, and you've covered the material if you've done that. Interesting. Examples, these two are going to be on your test. So make sure you know them. Give a defining feature of the concept island. That would be completely surrounded by water. One of the choices is going to say something about not inaccessible by cars, because that does not define the island. What defines the island is completely surrounded by water. A circle is a blank of the concept triangle. The answer would be a negative instance. We've not talked about that yet, but we're going to. Because it has nothing to do with the concept triangle other than being a shape. They're both shapes, but they by no means are anything alike. Alright, then we have three more terms to go. Script is a schema that involves a predictable sequence of events related to a common activity. If critical information is missing, schemas and scripts often enable learners to fill in those gaps in some reasonable way. Due to my prior experiences, I can kind of filter through long-term memory and find some fill-ins there if I need to. Another reason why meaningful learning experiences and prior experiences are so important. Students from diverse culture backgrounds typically come to school with somewhat different schemas and scripts, and that makes sense because the way they've been raised and that some of their culture is very much different. Students may interpret the same classroom material or activities differently, and in some cases may have trouble making sense of a particular lesson or reading assignment. I remember our fifth graders, the fifth grade English book was all about tapestry. Well, you can imagine my Hispanic families, they didn't even know what tapestry was, and I can say a lot of our own kids didn't know what tapestry was, so I'd spend some time actually teaching them about what tapestry was in order to be able to make sense of the sentences so they could pick which one was the best. As teachers, we need to find out whether students have the appropriate schemas and scripts to understand the subject matter we are teaching. So I want you to stop the video again. I want you to turn to your neighbor, to text somebody, call somebody, and talk about that very thing. How can you as a teacher find out existing schemas and scripts that students may have? All right, go ahead and stop. Alright, and number 3, when our students don't have such knowledge, we may sometimes need to back up and help them develop it before we forge on full steam ahead with new material. This is probably one of the fallouts I had with some of the teachers, or some of the teachers had with me. When 5th grade would come and I would say something about having to teach them the multiplication tables, a lot of the teachers and some of the administration even said, you cannot stop. You cannot teach them. That should have already been taught. You need to move on, move on. My question is, how do I move on with double-digit multiplication if you can't even do single numbers? How can I move on to multiplication, period, if you can't add and carry? Because if you think about it, multiplication involves adding and carrying. Same with division. If you don't know your multiplication tables, you can't do division. And if you don't know how to subtract and borrow, you can't do division either. So how do you move on? Never could understand that. Alright, prototypes are mental representations of a typical example of a concept. It's usually based on the concept examples that learners encounter most often. Children and adults alike see small birds, cars, and trucks more frequently than they see large birds, skateboards, and elevators. For this reason, if you think of the concept bird, do you think of the word dove, penguin, ostrich, or pelican? Stop the video. Call your friend again. Tell somebody in your house. Which word do you think of, and what do you think your students will think of, and why? Alright, schemas are a tightly organized set of facts related to a particular concept or phenomenon. Schemas give us the idea of what is typically true about an object or event. An example, I might show a picture of a barn in class. I later ask the students to draw a picture from memory. One student whose papa lives on a farm draws barn animals that were not in the original picture. The student schema of a barn and farm animals are interfering with each other. And I can give you an example of what I did in class. I bought a ring, metal ring. You can get it. I got mine at Evans. You probably can get it at Office Max. And I cut pictures out of calendars, pictures out of magazines, pictures out of whatever, Christmas cards, whatever. And I would laminate them and punch a hole in them and put them on this ring. Because there's not supposed to be any instructional downtime, if we had a few minutes, I would pull that out, and I might perhaps show them something and let them work on their memory. And I would let them see the picture, whatever picture I had, let them see it, and then I would put it away, and they would list all the things they can remember from the picture. That's just being attentive. That's following directions. That's practicing and working on their memory. All kinds of good stuff's come out of there. So I had a picture of a beach. The ocean, and so I let them see it a couple minutes, then put the picture away, and then let them start listing the items. You wouldn't believe how their schemas got involved there, because they started listing things that wasn't on the picture. Why? Because they've had experience with that. They've seen that when they've gone to the beach. So whatever happened on their beach trip, it tends to interfere with this picture, and they start telling all kinds of stuff that they saw in the picture and writing it down. And then we talk about that. Why did they do that? So schemas. All right, another little short video. These are the authors of Brain Rules. You've heard me quote them many times. A little activity for you.
Most of the factors that predict whether or not something that is being perceived will also be remembered operate in the first few seconds of learning. One of these factors involves something termed a schema, and whether or not the new learning bumps into one. Let me show you an example of a schema by having Dr. Whitehead and myself read a paragraph to you, one actually taken from a famous research paper. Your job is to remember as many facts about the paragraph as you can. Let me tell you in advance that you are going to fail miserably at this task unless I do something first. I can instantly improve your memory score from between 50 to 100% simply by adding 7 little words before you hear Dr. Whitehead and myself. But I'm not going to do that. You will hear the paragraph first, then I will read you the words.
The procedure is actually quite simple. First, you arrange things into different groups. Of course, one pile may be sufficient depending on how much there is to do.
If you have to go somewhere else due to lack of facilities, that is the next step. Otherwise, you are pretty well set. It is important not to overdo things. That is, it is better to do too few things at once than too many.
In the short run, this might not seem important, but complications can easily arise. A mistake can be expensive as well.
After the procedure is completed, one arranges the materials into different groups again. Then they can be put into their appropriate places.
Eventually, they'll be used once more in the whole cycle. They'll have to be repeated. However, that is a part of life.
Okay, so with that description, based on your schemas and scripts, what are they talking about? What did they just give you the directions on? Stop the video, turn around, talk to a friend, text somebody, whatever. Make a guess. Okay?
Did you get all that? No? Let us give you now the 7 magic little words. This paragraph is all about washing clothes. What that sentence provides for you is a mental framework, a way of organizing thoughts around some aspect of the world. We call such frameworks schemas, and you have them about people, situations, objects. This means something profound. prior knowledge can disturbingly shape how you memorize and retain for long-term storage future knowledge. If a schema is triggered near the moment of learning, that learning is more permanent.
Brainles!
And there's the schemas. Alright, I have been working on this video for 2-3 hours. It's now 11:35 on Friday night, Good Friday night. Hope you're enjoying your weekend. I hate this is so late coming out, but I've tried to figure out how to send this to you. As soon as that happens, I'll give this, but I will upload this into YouTube and send you the link on where to go. Hope it's helpful. Hope you enjoyed it. And Levi, I hope it was something more than just a PowerPoint. Have a good night.